Today we have a lot of 50mm in the studio. A $1,500 one, a $900 one, this tiny cute $200 one, and this big $2,000 one. According to my very wise friend Google, 50mm is the most popular focal length. It's like being the Michael B. Jordan of lenses. So we're gonna test them all to see which one really worth the money. I used them all in different scenarios and different projects in the last couple years. So I'm gonna show you photos and videos as much as possible. All four of them are equally good for videography and photography. So we're gonna start with weight and size. Sigma 1.4 is the heaviest with 815 grams. ZEISS and G Master are 780, but the Sony 1.8 is less than 200. All of them except the Sony 1.8 are really heavy. It's not a big con, but the heavier it is, the harder it is to set up and use on gimbal. For example, it took 4 minutes to set up the ZEISS lens on the gimbal, but the Sony 1.8 took less than a minute. And these things matter in run and gun situations. Also, it makes your hands tired more quickly, and most of the time you get smoother shot with lighter setup. Now let's go to autofocus. So they all great in case of autofocus, but it really depends on the camera that you're using. With recent Sony cameras like the A7S III or A7 IV, you get a decent autofocus. But to figure out which one is the best, we're gonna compare them side by side. And here we can clearly see which one did a better job. They all track the subject very well, but when she came back to the frame, Sony 1.8 was extremely faster and beat the other two every time. ZEISS and Sigma were both slower. Maybe ZEISS was the worst. Now let's take a look at sharpness to see which one is the sharpest. It's one of the most important features for photographers, but we're gonna test the sharpness in video too. And after a lot of zooming, I can see Sony 1.8 has a lot less sharpness than the others. It's a lot softer. And after taking the same shot with 3 different lenses, I took the shot to the computer to free my inner nerd. But I don't have to pixel peep so hard. Sony 1.8 was a lot softer than Sigma and ZEISS, as Sigma was kinda 10% sharper. Now let's talk about the maximum aperture of these 4 lenses. Aperture is the main reason for the price difference between these 4 lenses. When it's wider, price is higher. Maximum aperture on Sony is 1.8, on Sigma is 1.4, and G Master is the fastest with 1.2. So you get more light and more depth of field with wide aperture. The difference between f1.8 and f1.4 might not be super obvious at first, but it starts to show up when you put them side by side. Shots getting brighter and background gets blurrier. For example, in this shot, take a look at the neon signs. It gets blurrier and the image gets brighter. So Sigma and ZEISS has a huge advantage over Sony, and G Master is on top of the line, cause you get even a little bit more on 1.2. And the only one with a focus breathing compensation is the G Master lens. And all the other 3 are not supported. Let's talk about build quality and features. On the Sigma we have the AF/MF switch. On the ZEISS we have the aperture ring, aperture click switch, and AF/MF switch. And on the G Master we have them all with 2 extra focus hold buttons. And on the Sony 1.8, well, there's nothing on this lens. Also they have different filter diameter size. It's 72mm on Sigma and G Master, 67 on ZEISS, and on Sony 1.8 is weirdly small at 49. The minimum focus distance on Sigma and G Master is 40cm, and Sony and ZEISS is a little bit further at 45. And by the way, this video is brought to you by Artlist. This video's music and titles were all from Artlist, so if you're a creator looking for great high quality cinematic music for your videos that has a unique feel to it, Artlist is amazing for that. They have an insanely big library of royalty-free music and sound effects that you can license for your own projects with an unlimited subscription. You can also get 2 months free added to your subscription if you use my link down in the description. Thanks again to Artlist for sponsoring this video. Now after a couple days of playing with these lenses, this is my final thoughts. I think they all have pros and cons. What's the best option? Well, it kinda depends on the way you want to use them and your budget. For example, Sony 1.8 is amazing for less than $200. It's lightweight, my favorite to use on gimbal, but it's not very sharp and it has less brightness and depth of field compared to the other 3. The ZEISS 1.4? Well, I actually don't recommend this lens. It's a very good lens, but it doesn't worth the money. In all of my tests, it wasn't the best at anything. But on the other hand, Sigma 1.4 was great. It's super sharp, the price is fair, minimum focus distance is good, and Sigma recently released the second version of this lens, which is a lot lighter, and it has a decent autofocus. And in case of the G Master 1.2, you kinda get 10% more brightness and 10% more depth of field. But for these 10% more features, you have to pay 120% more. So in my opinion, G Master is not the best option. So that's it. Let me know what would you choose.